What do you imagine when I say a senior or an old person? Do you see someone like this? Or maybe you see someone like that? This is who I see. This is my grandmother. She's in her 70s. This is also her. She and her friends have musicians among themselves. They regularly get together to play and sing for themselves, but also for other people. And during Christmas time, they use a house of one of them in the center of Prague to play and sing for anyone that comes by and to serve hot wine to them as well. I learned a lot from my grandmother about togetherness, life enjoyment, and also things like playing cards or picking mushrooms without accidentally killing myself. A few weeks ago, she underwent quite a complicated spine surgery. She's okay now. She's in a rehabilitation center to heal completely. Seeing all the medical attention that she received and the incredibly nice nurses that were taking care of her, it got me thinking that I'm happy for the first time in my rather short working career that the government gets about 40% of my total salary towards causes like universal healthcare. It also got me thinking, how long will this be a norm? Will we be able to afford it? And or rather yet, will the working population be large enough to support causes and issues like universal healthcare? It is a fact that the Czech population, as well as many other so-called Western societies' populations, are getting older, stagnating in number, or even shrinking in number. Czech people now supposedly prefer being wealthy to having children. And my generation, the so-called millennial generation, is just going to be worse in this regard because the family appeal is just not strong enough for us anymore. The elderly blame the young that they are not making sure the working population remains large enough. And the younger blame the older for the way the industries work under their leadership to create a different economic and social spectrum in which having a family when you are younger is not as easy anymore. And the economic spectrum is not just the one thing that they disagree on and that seems to put these two groups on different sides. Political aspect is another thing. It was nicely visible now after the Czech parliamentary elections and also in Britain after the Brexit referendum. The old do not think that the young know how the world works, while the young do not think that the old know how the world should be working. And is this something that we as a society cannot avoid, though? Because to me, it seems that the only thing that we are lacking here is the lack of understanding. And it's really not easy to reach this understanding, not often. Because it's much easier to make a generalization about a group of people, to make a quick judgment about who is behaving how and who is different from us and how and why they are worse. Take, for instance, millennial generation, spoiled, lazy, impatient. So this is often how we are portrayed, and what this creates is that nobody understands us, that the older generation does not understand us, and that they are judging us. I really like Simon Sinek's take on this. If you know him, you might know why I like his particular opinion on this matter. He explains millennials and our behavior in the workplace by understanding that we simply grew up in a little bit different environment, this environment of instant gratification, raised by different parental habits and surrounded by ever-developing technologies which we naturally just knew how to use because we grew up with them. But what he doesn't do is he doesn't judge either of the two groups. He tries to make them reach an understanding and tries to make them work most efficiently in any industry, which in result creates a little bit more harmony in a society as a whole. And it's not really easy to reach this understanding always. Especially the ever-developing technologies and the world of open borders made us really a little bit differently angled people. The ever-developing technologies made us the so-called digital natives, and the world of open borders made it really easy for us, or even expected us, to study abroad or live abroad for at least some amount of time. This, in turn, made us more open to the idea of international cooperation, European Union, globalization, but also social topics like the LGBT acceptance. We buy less homes and cars, and we value experience more than ownership. We are also more prone to depression and suicides because the expectations of what we are supposed to live through, what we are supposed to experience, where we are supposed to travel, and what profession we are supposed to reach before we settle down is getting increasingly more demanding, very often not realistic in the first place. And we might sometimes feel that the older generation does not understand this discrepancy between us and them. But it's not that they are different people living in different worlds, they are just in different stages of their lives. I would like to offer an example here. When I was telling my grandmother about this exciting trip to Bali that I took this year, she immediately asked me how much money I paid to go there. And then, based on my travel habits in 2017, she calculated how much longer it will take me before I can get a mortgage. She did math and everything. Our worlds just did not meet there. But it's not that she would be a different type of person from me. She's just in a different stage of her life where the safety of having her own home is very important to her. And she just wants this sort of feeling of calmness for me as well when I'm older. And she's just afraid that I'm not on the right track to reach it. At school, I was learning who coined which term for which generation, how they were called, and what they were doing. Later at work, I attended a few workshops where we were basically going through the same thing, but more in a marketing way. So we were learning which generation approach which media, how, what they like to consume as a media, how to talk to them, etc. I also attended a few workshops like this about the millennial generation, and it was very specific about what we eat, how we talk, who we talk to, what we like to do, what we do not like to do, and I was just sitting there thinking of how much we like to generalize and how much we like to label groups of people. And this labeling always creates a gap between people, because when we are labeled as a group in a way and described, it means that we are different from another group, which is also described in a different way. And if we say that someone, no matter how old, is too far from us to understand our situation, we have just not tried hard enough. Not just from our side, but also from their side. We are not different people because we live in different worlds, but we might seem different because we are at different stages of our lives and we have different priorities at our particular stage of our lives. And would it not be better if the famous "when I was your age" sentence was having a descriptive or informative nature rather than judgmental one? If I ever say "when I was your age" as a judgment or as in "you should have it harder," I will try to replay this video immediately. I've already used this sentence a few times towards my younger sister, and she's 11 years younger and I'm in my 20s. Imagine me what I'm going to do when I'm 70. Experience is what gives anyone older than anyone else the incentive to comment how easier the younger generation has it. As if that was even a problem. It's not our job to make it harder for those that come after us. If the generation of my sister when they grow up, if they have it easier than us, I will be like, job well done. I will be really happy about that. I really hope that happens. I do not think it will. I think they will have their own issues that we might not understand, but I really hope it will. And I hope that we will see our similarities rather than differences. Like this one, for instance. This is what happens when you Google millennials, or rather yet, this is what happened when I Googled millennials. Everyone looks pretty much the same. The pictures are very light. Everyone has friends, everyone's smiling. Everyone is clothed in a similar manner. And everyone is happy. No one's depressed, right? And now we can take that and we can say, this is another example how they do not understand us. This is how they see us as a group of people, not as individuals. And this is how they think that we have it easy. This is how they think that we are just enjoying our lives. But look at what happens when you Google baby boomers. It's the same thing. It's basically the same thing. Everyone has friends, nobody is alone, nobody is lonely. To me, the only change in the brief was just do not give them technology because they are older. Just give them yoga mats and bicycles because they enjoy nature more than younger people. Keep the technology for the millennials when we are shooting them next week. And you know, the worry of the older generation that family is not important to us might not even be real. We might not be the best at forming deep, meaningful connections with all our tagging, swiping left and right and poking. But it doesn't mean that we are not trying and that being a good parent and having successful marriage is not important to us. It just means that we might need a little bit of a help from the older generation. When I'm with my grandmother, I'm never on my phone. She always makes me live through the moment with her, and I would never take a phone in my hand when I'm around her. She subtly teaches me the basic human connection and how to live in a moment with another person. So this is what they can help us, and what we can understand from them and get and be taught from them. Where I do see the discrepancy between us, though, is the economic one, and I think that this is what causes most of the problems. My family bought an apartment here in Prague about 8 years ago. Now its value is up by 70%. Half of this increase happened in the last 2 years. The salaries did not keep up with this fact, not at all. It's going to be increasingly more demanding to have a family in your 20s because even getting your own apartment or your own place is getting much harder. Because of the expectations of what you are supposed to achieve before you settle down, it's also going to be much harder. If you have children in your 20s, if you have a family in your 20s, you have not lived enough. If you wait till your 30s, you have not cared enough. There's just no way to win. And I think that the older generation cannot judge us merely by what we do not do. In our case, in this case, especially having a family in our 20s, but they need to understand the situation that we are coming from. And on the other hand, we cannot merely say we are a group of people that's misunderstood. We need to take time to make them understand, to reach an understanding between us. So maybe just go visit your old folks, if you are still lucky enough to have them. Try to tell them what you think and try to ask them what they think. Because ultimately, we are living in a society where respecting the past is as important as seeing possibilities for the future. And the way I see it, we can either join the bandwagon of writing articles and blog posts and funny pictures about how each generation hates the other generation, how this group of people hates this group of people, or we can try to reach more situations like this. And I personally would like to do the latter. So maybe we can do something about that. Thank you.